Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put all these decks in and then we'll paint them at the same time as we paint the smaller rooms which have the artificial deck and we're not putting wood down in them. And that'll just key everything together a little bit then. So I'm going to crack on with this because I really want to get to getting these in. Now we have some doors and things to put on, but we can do all of that once this is installed in the deck. Right then, it is time to fit in our main two side pieces. And that starts with this front bulkhead because we're building this up slightly differently. If you haven't put this part in like I have, then you put the two side pieces in and then you've got a support in the middle and then two ends to put on. But because I have this in place so that we could make sure there was no filling required, I'm going to have to put the front bulkhead in and then slot these in. So I need to clean up the front bulkhead first job. So the fit of this part is a little difficult. I've had to sand the side pieces here and here just to be able to slot it in between this part. It was just too tight and it made the part bow. Once you have slotted it down and you've sanded a little bit off each side at the bottom here, you then have to make sure that it fits just behind these two bases for the outside lifts. Because if that doesn't sit behind that, then there is a gap on this edge here, which is going to look pretty shocking. And you wouldn't be easy to resolve because everything else isn't going to fit. So it's worth taking the time to keep test fitting this until you're happy you've got it right and it's tight within the bulkheads. So as long as it's behind there, behind that base and sat down flush, you won't have a problem. If you've got a gap in this area here, then it's not sat properly. So I have that in now, so I'm going to glue that in. There's two little location tabs at the bottom which are fitted into slots, and then the main thing is gluing it in on these sides so that it's all solid. There's some location tabs on the inside of this part here, and they don't marry up particularly well, so ignore that. What you're looking for is this face being flush, because that's the bit people are going to see. I'm going to change the camera angle and hopefully give you a better view of putting these side pieces in. Now I've got as much of you in view as I can. Apologies about my voice, I'm still getting over COVID. So take our first side piece, which has got some of our flooring done, just got the painting part of the flooring to do. Normally this would just pop down like I say, but what we've got to do is slide this piece under this piece here. So just going to align it up with this little lip here, intermittently with location tab holes. So just going to line that up, and then that bit goes underneath there like so, and then we drop into place. Okay, that seems all good and has gone into its location slot there nicely. Okay, and put this second one in. Right, and that seems to be into place. Okay, let me just check. Is there an orientation for that piece? Yeah. So when you put this piece in, this location tab at the bottom protrudes out on one side, but not the other side. And you want the flat surface facing towards the bow. So that's okay. So I need to test fit this bit next. Which forms our stern plate for all those decks we've built. So that goes in with these two lumps facing towards the stern, facing outwards if you like. And that goes in nicely as well. So that's good because we've got a little building structure to put in at the bottom here. So yeah, happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape that up now, and then we're going to run some glue on the inside of all of this and glue it into place. Okay, we've got our back bulkhead all taped up there, and that's sitting where I need it to be while we glue all this in. We'll start by gluing this inside edge. And we'll let capillary action do its thing. Obviously, this will become a lot more rigid once we get the upper deck on. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Okay, I'll finish gluing this in and come back to you in a minute. So let's talk about the next step. These glazed areas here have been causing me so many problems. Actually, what I'm finding is the little stanchions, once they're glued into place, are extremely delicate, and I keep finding them moved and out of place. I've also noticed that as I started building up these are quite flexible, and that didn't help the fit of them. So if you're going to do this, my recommendation is you do one level at a time as you build up the decks, which helps this become more rigid, and that will help in the fitting, which is difficult, as you've seen. But one of the things that makes it more rigid is putting in the actual glazing medium. So I'm now using glue and glaze from Deluxe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glaze, as I've done these, I'm going to glaze all of these, which makes them more rigid. On this side, I've only put in the bottom ones, and I've got a couple that have dropped out, so I need to sort that. And I'll glaze just the bottom ones on this side, and we'll do these as we go up deck by deck. So it'll be glue the deck in, put the stanchions in, glaze it, put the next deck in, so on and so forth. Every time we do that, that stops work at the back, and we will go and do something either on the top deck or on the front. But we can't put the top deck in proper until the last deck here goes on, because actually the top deck overhangs and then there's a ladder that meets down, and it need to be sure of the fit. But there is stuff we can be doing on the front end of the ship, and we've got a lot of lifeboats to build, so we can be doing. We've cleaned the parts up, but we can start painting them and putting them together. Okay, so with all of that done, let's crack on and have a look at that. So I just think I should show you this. I thought I'd be clever and mix our crystal smoke that we'll be using for darkening the glazing with the glue and glaze, and it just turns it into a lumpy sludge. So we're going to go back to plan A. So we have two little wing decks here, and the wooden deck is off centre to it, and it does look like you've got a lot of plastic, but actually when you look at the actual thing, there is quite a big gutter around there anyway, so it's not incorrect. We just need to centralise it. So I'm going to cut these off and move them up a little bit, and whilst I do that, Stephen's going to tell you a little bit more about them.
Sometime after we signed the contract for the building of Queen Mary 2, I suddenly realised that perhaps it would be a nice feature to add some docking bridges for passenger observation to the aft end of the ship. And after discussion with the shipyard, we agreed to fit two small semicircular platforms replicating docking bridges at the aft end of deck 8. And from these positions, you can stand and look down the side of the ship, giving you a completely different perspective of the ship at sea.
So I hadn't really noticed before, but you can actually see a lot more through the windows on these bulkheads than I first thought. So it's the same with the lower windows here. If I just change your angle, these lower windows that run along here. So what I'm going to do is just paint in this white plastic along these edges here. And whilst we're doing our black painting on the inside of the hull, I'm also going to paint the inside of the lift shaft here black. Stephen tells me that the glass there is so dark, so black, that you can all but not see through it. So we're going to paint that in black just to help our crystal smoke darken up a little bit when it's in that area. So there's no point building a lift. I was originally going to scratch build a lift, but you can't see anything in there, so we can just blank that out. Painted all this in black, but there's some areas where we're going to have good visibility, and we want to be able to well, we are going to be able to see through the windows. Now the windows are going to be clear, not smoky, so when we put this piece in on this side, there are no windows, but on the other side the windows continue down. There's some form of ventilation in that area there. But on this side, the windows continue down. So I'm going to paint so you can see, when you look through those windows, an impression of the Queen's Grill, which is the grill on this side, Princess Grill on this side. So the little wall section that's behind it, I'm going to paint flat brown, 7984, to give us the impression of wood panelling. There's there's sort of wood glaze dividers up, and then there's wooden stuff behind it. And when you look at pictures of it, the overall impression is fairly dark. So I'm going to go with that at the background. Then on the floor, I'm going with a brown sand. Now it's a patterned carpet, but again, in the distance, the overall appearance is sort of that tan colour because of the patination on it, even though there's blue, like a blue-grey in the carpet and so on. And then as we move further along into this section here, we've got the grill lounge. So it's like a waiting area before you go in and dine, and there's a bar there and what have you. And again, the windows here, if I can change the camera angle, the windows here are quite large. And again, they're clear, so you will be able to see through into that fairly well. So I'm going to paint them a rocky sand because there's quite a light. Again, it's a patterned carpet. It's quite a golden yellow pattern on a blue background, but the pattern is so heavy that in the distance it's a sort of a yellow look. So I'm going with a rocky sand for this section here. So we'll get that painted up next.
Now, I'm an engineer, and engineering things, especially big things, excite me. But the engineering in this ship is quite phenomenal. And probably the most exciting part is the way we drive the ship through the water. And there are 4 of these electric motors, and we call them pods. They were made by Rolls-Royce with the name Mermaids, and they hang underneath the ship. Each one 21.5 megawatts of power, and collectively they can drive the ship at almost 30 knots when necessary. The most incredible thing about these things is that each one weighs 320 tons, and that is the weight of a 747 jumbo jet. So hanging underneath the ship, we have the equivalent of 4 jumbo jets. The forward 2, all they do is move the ship backwards and forwards, but the aft pair that you can see here, they swivel round and actually steer the ship, so we don't have a rudder. And this strange stern, remember what I said about looking back at the past? In the mid-1960s, an Italian naval architect called Costanzi, he designed the Oceanic and the Eugenio C. And his idea was that you would have the flat transom part, which is good for propulsive efficiency, but you would have the rounded cruiser stern, which is good for seakeeping, especially when you expect the aft end of the ship to be moving up and down in swells, which is what we encounter on the Atlantic. And it had not been done again since the 1960s. So I asked the shipyard to test this, and we found that it worked really well. And that's why we have this 1960s inspired stern on the ship. Now, one of the most difficult things I had to deal with was the design of the funnel, because there is a height limit to get under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge in New York. And the height limit is 62 meters. And the height of the funnel we have here is exactly that height. And I had trouble designing the funnel to throw the smoke clear of the ship. And that's why we've got the really exaggerated wind scoop or skirt around the bottom of it, because that captures the airflow, throws it upwards, and helps throw the smoke overboard. And even behind the funnel, on the deck house, there's this strange railing. And people say to me, well, is that to stop people falling off that gas turbine house? Because that's where the gas turbines are. No, it's not. What that does, it slows down the air behind the funnel, causing it to bunch up. And that prevents a vacuum being formed behind the funnel that would otherwise drag the smoke down. So all these little things that you think wouldn't have any consequence have a big thing to play on this ship. Now, of course, here we are going under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, and we're at low tide here. But at high tide, we only have 9 feet to spare. And I'm often asked, what would have been the problem if I'd got my calculations wrong? Well, I say our American cousins conspired to build this bridge so low so I couldn't have my high funnel, but it would only have been a problem the first time. So here we have our funnel. It's rather more squat than I would have liked for that reason, but we have 2 whistles, one of which came from the original Queen Mary on her centre funnel. And it's the starboard side whistle that came from the ship, and we blow air rather than steam through it to give the exact sound as the original Queen Mary, and the other whistle is a replica. And certainly when the ship first entered service, there was a steam line that went up to the whistle and blew steam out of it to make it look as though it was being driven by steam, to try and give that aura that the old Queen Mary had as she left port.
So we're using the Duraluminium 77702 from the metal colour range for things like the little vents and things that we see around the ship. It's a nice dark silvery colour, and as you can see, I've not had to thin it. I can use it straight from the bottle. That's going down nicely. Now all the little elliptical shapes that we have along the edge of the deck here on the bulkheads, they should be flush, but I can't find a way that's simple and effective to make them flush and recreate them. So I'm going to paint those in. They are actually this sort of colour on the actual ship, but they're louvre and they're flush with the bulkhead. So I'm just going to paint them in even though they're recessed. I think they'll look fine. You see, there's quite a number of these around the ship, and they all want to be painted in this same dark aluminium colour. Right, just going to brush paint this in our white. We're continuing to use the 71001 because it's a Model Air. You can use it straight from the bottle for brush painting. Don't need to prime. It goes on really nicely, and we'll probably only need 1 coat. We'll get this painted in, and then we can glaze the windows, and then that's this part done. And we'll do these other parts as well and glaze those, and then we can build that up, and then that allows us to put our next deck level on at the rear. Paint under here where we'll be able to see it at certain angles, so we're just going to paint that in white. I have no doubt there's some form of supporting structure under here, but for the sakes of what we're doing, we'll just paint it in white. We've got rid of the ejector pin marks, so it's not unsightly, and that is the main thing, I think. and we have to remember that edges will be visible, so paint those in as well while we're at it. Right. Okay, happy with that. Right, it is time to make up some furniture. This will be the first furniture we tackle. And this is from a company called JSC. And they do card models. And they do a Queen Mary. Just happens to be in 1/400 scale. So we're using their tables and chairs for some of the dining room furniture that we would like. So we don't need the parasols, so they can go back in. Well, we have in here some benches, some folding lounges and their legs. We have some chairs, some beds, and these are little tables. What we're interested in is these little tables and the chairs. They're all designed to go on the outside, but actually we can use the tables and the chairs to put some furniture in the dining rooms. So with that in mind, I think we need to paint these up. So let's have a look at some colours. So we're going to put this furniture in the King's Court, and the King's Court seems to have like sandy coloured chairs and brown tables. And actually the tables are square, but we'll have to use a little bit of artistic license. So what we'll do is do the chair legs brown and tables brown, and do the rest of the chairs in this sort of cream colour. So let's try and find some colours. I think we're going to go with flat brown for the tables rather than the mahogany, which is just that little bit darker. So I think this will look better. I'm going to go with 7847 dark sand for the chairs. That dry bit, and then we'll give it a second coat. I'm hoping it'll dry fairly quickly as it's card. Right, let's get the brown done. Okay, we'll do the tables in the brown. Go see how easy it'll be to paint these. Actually, not too bad. whilst my various coats of crystal smoke are drying on the glazing, and I'm finding that it's taking about 3 to 4 coats to get it as dark as I want it to be. But whilst that's drying, next job, before we can put this these bulkheads in and the deck above it, is we need to deal with these elliptical recesses. Now, actually, on the real ship, these are holes, and they let light and air into the sort of the passage area at the back here, which is covered by the decks extending to this bulkhead. So we need to drill these out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start that process by putting some holes in with my drill bit here, and then we're going to open it out using the diamond tool. I've got a set of them here. Some of them are quite thin, so ideal for this job. So let's start with that then. Okay, so we can replace that drill bit now. So I'm going to use this one, I think, which is slightly conical, but only slightly. And that should give us the ability to quickly clear out this material. Okay. Okay, now we're in and roughed out. I've took the speed of the drill right down to its slowest speed, which is 5,000 RPM. And that'll give me a little bit more control to get out some of these big areas. So I find the diamond drill bits are really good as little hand files, to be honest. So we can go in and use it as a little file, and that's, you know, as good as a proper file. In fact, you quite often have a little bit more control just because they're shorter. So I wouldn't be confident to put this one, which is as wide as it is, in there for fear of damaging plastic that we don't actually want to remove, but doing it slowly by hand is not a problem at all. There we go, that's looking a lot better, isn't it? So just need to go in with a knife around the back and scrape away any of the swarf and just deburr everything, and then we should be good to go. Okay, Okay, so for me that looks a lot more authentic because we're now open. We can see through. It means we'll be able to see some of the work that we've done in the background, and also it means that the lighting will be better in that corridor, so that'll look more authentic as well. So it's definitely worth opening those up. So yeah, I'm gonna continue with staining the glass, but right now we're going to get this bottom set of bulkheads in, and then we've got a little bit of work to do to them before we can put the upper deck on there. But I need to open up the other side first, so I'm going to go away and do that, and then I'll come back to you when we're ready to put the bulkheads in. Okay, now we've opened up our little holes at the back, just here, we can now put our bulkheads in. So there is a natural compulsion to want to have them that way up with the windows at the top, but that's wrong. The windows go at the bottom. So the one with all the windows going on starboard. So we're just going to put them into place to start with. There's a little bit of a bow in this one, and then we've got this end bulkhead. And that's the one I'm most concerned about, making sure that that is straight. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to glue that one in straight away. I'm just going to leave that to dry before I do anything else, because I don't want to move it when we do those other bulkheads. So it wants to just push itself out a little bit, so I'm just going to hold it in place for a moment. Okay, that's our bulkheads in. Now the next piece is, we've got this sort of support piece which goes in here, and it's going to help us with the strength of these, and it has positioning points for all the decks. So let's bring you out a little bit so you can get a better view. Okay, there's two location holes at the bottom, and then if we just, there we go, so it should sit against this back here and then tight within these two sides, which it sort of does. So I'm going to glue it first into that bulkhead and putting some glue in at the bottom. Must make sure it's pushed right back, otherwise it might give us a problem with deck fit, and we absolutely don't want that. There we go. Just make sure that is forward correctly, sitting in place. Okay. Hold that in place for a sec. And whilst it's doing, I'm going to have a look at whether this clamp will do this job. So these are Amati sash clamps. They're brilliant because they've got such a long jaw. 120mm, 4 3/4 inches. Yeah, that should hold. So I think we'll put a spot of medium CA in there. Okay, let's see how this goes. Right, let's leave all that to dry. Okay, coming to fit the next deck on now, and what I'm finding is that it's not quite wanting to sit in place, and the issue is that the distance between that and that is wider than the distance between that lip there and this lump here that sticks out. So I'm going to cut a little bit out of the corner there and shave a little bit off that. So we'll do that now. So I'm simply going to cut a section of plastic off, which will give us a little bit of wriggle room. And then on this corner we can just file a little bit off. There we go, and that should be all we need to do. So let's have another go. There we go, that's sitting lovely now. So fit there is going to be good. I think we can probably liquid glue around the back of there. But obviously we can't on that bit. We'll have to put some weights on, so I'm going to get some weights. Okay, so apologies for my hands. You're actually looking at it side on to me, which gives you a great view and allows me to get in as well. Put that deck in, and rather than putting weights on, I'm actually just going to use pegs to keep it down. And I'm just going to push it down and hold it in place, and then we can run in with our liquid glue against the back there. Let it do its capillary thing. Right, that's the next deck in place. Brill. Now then, I still have this clock face to do, and I've decided the best way is probably with an AK pencil. So I'm going to use the black one and just very gently go over the top so that the detail gets highlighted. There we go. 2:30. Okay, I've just removed the clamps from that, and I'm happy that's sitting how I want it. We have some railing to put on around there. Okay, our duplex rooms can go in next job, like so. And again, we can just liquid poly those from the back. There's a little bit of a gap, but we're going to wait until we come to put this final deck on to see how all that fits together. So we have 3 different types of lifeboat, all of which need to be painted to a certain degree in a bright orange, and we are using Vallejo's 7851 bright orange for that task. But when you look at this type of lifeboat, which is the predominant one on the ship, these little parts here, this section here, this raised rectangle on both sides, is the access point to the lifeboat. And when you look at pictures, it tends to be slightly lighter in colour. Now, the nature of these lifeboats is that the UV light fades them anyway, so exact shade of bright orange is a little bit irrelevant, but definitely this sort of canvas material, whatever it is that this is made of, fades at a faster rate than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint those bits in first using the bright orange, which has a dab of white in it just to make it a little paler than the main, than the straight colour from the bottle, which we'll use for the rest of it. And hopefully that'll give us the effect that we're looking for.